Welcome. My name is Natasha Sherman, and I am your host. And our show today is about a disease called scleroderma, which is not familiar to most people, but impacts thousands and thousands of people. So my first guest is Jane Greshik, and she was diagnosed with scleroderma in 1987. And I'm going to ask you, Jane, welcome. And
It's good to be back for the third time.
Yes, third time.
Third
It's a
time.
charm.
It's a
So tell us what scleroderma is, briefly.
Yeah, just simply, so that the people who don't know it get it. It's
Yes.
a connective tissue disorder. And it shuts down your organs one at a time. And in my case, it was the whole gastrointestinal tract. And
So I'm going to interrupt you here just from what I remember.
yeah,
So it's a connective tissue disorder, but what it does is the tissue continues to grow and eventually covers your organs. And for you, it was the gastrointestinal tract. So,
you're right. It's like weeds.
and you
It
couldn't
just-
swallow, you
Swallow.
couldn't eat, you couldn't digest, and you couldn't eliminate.
Absolutely.
And it was a painful disease.
Absolutely. And it lasted, I had it for over 20 years. Initially, things, you couldn't swallow water, couldn't get food down, couldn't go to the bathroom. These are things that people deal with every day. I mean, if you ask a lot of people, they can't go to the bathroom.
Right.
Or they have trouble swallowing. So, in my opinion, I think a lot of people have this and don't even know that they have it.
Mm. So then it kept growing and growing and growing. And again, this is hard for people to imagine, being in pain, not being able to eat, not being able to eliminate, pushing through all of that, knowing there's no cure, knowing that the tissue continues to grow,
Absolutely.
and pushing through all of that.
Mhm.
And then when did you go on and there's no cure and it's hard to diagnose. So when did you go on the medication that ultimately shifted everything?
Exactly. And up to that time, I did nothing. So I had a lot of offers to do studies, to be part of things. And your gut feeling sometimes, like what you have, maybe I don't want to do that because
Yes.
it might make it worse.
And they were ready to remove your intestines.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I had, the colon was flat as a pancake, was non-operable, that was at the end.
Okay.
I was
So
absolutely at the end of this ride. And then my gastroenterologist, my lovely lady, said, "What have you got to lose, Jane? Take this."
So this was a medication
Absolutely.
called procalamide,
At the
or
time,
at the time, Resolor,
Resolor. It's had several names.
but not available in this country.
No.
So
Oh.
where did you get it from?
Actually, I got it from Canada Drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And
It was very expensive.
it was $500 a month.
And so what
$500
started
a month.
happening?
Well, when I initially took it, I didn't feel very much,
Mm-hmm.
and it was very costly, and it was like, maybe this isn't going to work, and now I'm into $1,000 and $1,500. But you know what? It didn't fix things, but it made them a tiny bit better, just a tiny. Or I couldn't swallow water, and now I could swallow a little bit of water.
Wow.
Or maybe when I went to the bathroom, there was minimal going to the bathroom.
Right.
But I stayed with it, and I think that was one of the things that definitely worked, because her opinion is that it was a cumulative effect. And it wasn't until I saw her again that she said, "Look, double it. Let's go, 2 milligrams to 4 milligrams." And it was right after that this enormous transition happened, where I was scheduled to go in for surgery, where I thought I wouldn't recover from that. I mean, my immune system, my blood counts were down 4 to 5.
And you were getting transfusions.
Yeah.
And
Oh my God, transfusions all the time. And so, you kind of know what's going to happen. And I mean, within that 30-day period, I started to feel better. Within that 30-day period, and I called the physician and told them the story.
No more surgery.
No more. So I didn't have to do that, and then I got progressively better quickly. And her feeling is that it was cumulative. That all that time I didn't think it was doing anything, it was doing something.
So quickly looked like you could now swallow, eat, drink, and eliminate.
Absolutely. In a very short period of time. And all my kids said to me the same thing. Mom, don't get excited. It could come back. It's because they watched me for 20 years. You know, don't get excited. You know, it could come back, and guess what? It never came back.
So I'm going to miraculous, but then also, how long were you on it before you decided, okay, I can go off?
I went off it quickly.
You just listened to your body.
I did. And I went off it by myself.
And you've been off of it for how many years?
3.
And your body is now functioning, you're digesting, it's like a reboot of your system, and it's like it's gone.
A lot of things happened. I mean, where do you get the motility back in your track? When you couldn't drink water and
For
you
all those years.
couldn't swallow anything. So where does that motility come from? And
So I'm going to, it's miraculous.
Mhm.
So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. So we did the first show and we talked about, you came on to talk about scleroderma, to create an awareness, but also to create an awareness that there were drugs available, just not in this country. And this week I looked up and there were 30,800 views of that show. So clearly there are people out there
I
suffering.
love when you say that, because when we first did the show, my kids would call me and say, "Oh my God, Mom, there's 10 people."
Right.
I know. And I would be 10 people, went
Yeah.
to 50 people. When
Yeah.
it went to 100, I was
Yeah.
aghast. What?
And now, not only did I receive phone calls from around the
know.
world, you receive phone calls around the world, people begging you, what's the medicine? I'll pay you. I'll fly you here. I'll do anything.
We are talking China, Taiwan, Philippines, Australia,
Yeah.
France,
Yeah.
India. Go figure. And this show did that. This show went around the world. This show, I mean, and to hear people at all times of the night and day calling, offering the woman in Taiwan, her husband had a business. We don't care. We've got a business. We're going to send you the money. And that wasn't the first one. I've had a lot of people come on. And why would you?
Unbelievable.
I mean, just think of dealing with that. Just think
Yes.
of listening to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here, the first show, and the first show you kind of hesitated to name the name of the drug because you were afraid
I made
people
a
might
mistake.
take it.
Yeah.
Well, you know, you were being responsible.
I
But when
know.
you got this response, you very quickly got a hold of
Uh,
me and said, can I come on and talk about the drugs? And you did.
I did.
And to date, that show has gotten close to 13,000 views.
Almost, let's see, 30. So we're
So
looking at
45,000,
45,000 people
Yeah.
who know how to spell it.
Yeah.
So
So the medication, so it's like at that time on the second show, your goal was to get volunteers for studies, get pharma to invest in studies, not knowing that there were already some studies happening, but just kind of, let's figure this out. But we know that that kind of thing, getting pharma interested in studies, whatever, is millions and millions of dollars and years. So now we're going to bring in Oded. So welcome, Oded. So
Thank you for having me.
Oded is Jane's neighbor and friend. He is a Harvard graduate in business, has an MBA, is it?
Correct.
So you're the kind of the strategist, and your wife is a physician and clinical researcher.
Correct.
So has that mindset. So the two of them kind of allied with Jane, became her co-conspirators, and have moved this forward. So in your research, it seems to me that, or you or your wife found out that Shire Pharmaceutical was already doing studies. So say more about that.
Okay. My wife, Marav, is working at another pharmaceutical company, but it just so happens that her boss, the one who hired her for the first company she worked for, actually works at Shire. So we had the contacts. We contacted the GI department of Shire with the intention, I think this was after the second video, of assembling all the people that would contact us and starting our own research. That, if successful, would take years and millions, but also would only approve, if it's successful, it would only get the drug approved for that specific narrow indication. When we contacted Shire, we realized that they were very close to getting the drug approved for a much broader indication, which is constipation. It's actually referred to in the literature as CIC.
Chronic idiopathic constipation.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Constipation of no specific reason or cause. But then our goal would be achieved because now you have procrolipride on the shelves in America. So, we're close enough to our initial goal. We don't have to get those millions and years. And we're in touch with Shire. We're in touch with, Jane wrote to the head of the FDA.
And thank God we got a response before he quit.
Unbelievable, yes.
Yeah.
Which is basically an endorsement of what's called off-label prescriptions. Meaning,
So let's talk about that meeting of the advisory committee. It started out
Sure.
with that. So
Sure, this is a very important thing to mention. The reason is that all the people that contacted us, they said, well, it's not approved in America. Our doctors are not willing to write it. Either they don't know it, or they suspect that it might be risky, or they don't want to get in trouble with the FDA. So all of that is behind us. Why? Because the drug was brought to the FDA for approval. And the way the FDA thinks of any drug is to assemble a board of experts from various places, the best experts they can get, and they vote. It's very rare that a vote would be unanimous, and this is exactly what happened here. Unanimous vote in favor of approving procrolipride. The reason they needed Shire to run studies and get it approved is because there's a relative of procrolipride, same family of drugs, and that has been taken off. The FDA actually pulled it off the shelves because it was risky. So they really wanted more studies, and now they got them, and it proved to be very safe. Moreover, this drug has been used in Europe and elsewhere, 58 or 59 countries already, more than 1 million person years. So more than 250,000
That's a big number.
patients.
Yeah.
If you use a drug on so many people, you get the best statistics, and it's absolutely proven safe. That's why it was unanimous. Also, we know it's effective. We know it's effective for CIC, regular constipation, but we do know that it's effective for scleroderma, just in terms of helping you with your constipation. There's one study in Italy, one study in Belgium, and those studies prove beyond any doubt that it does help scleroderma patients. But this was where the breakthrough came, and I don't know if you wanted me to go into it right now, but sure, okay. So my wife especially, being a physician, she had to be skeptical. She says, well, Jane's not taking the drug anymore.
Exactly.
That is either a miracle or there is something we need to understand here. And this is
So just to simplify it, she had this incurable disease. She took a medication. It wasn't like killing a virus. It was something got activated or reactivated or rebirthed or rebooted, and whatever wasn't working for all those years started working.
Right. And the reports we got from Jane was that the biopsies, the doctors looking into the tissue, and let me just say one more thing. It wasn't just the gut, it was also the esophagus. So things got better here. Procrolipride is not supposed to, or isn't known to be helping, that we know of, in the upper parts. But the biopsies, the images of the cells, according to Jane, showed, and to Jane's doctors, regrowth. And then we said, okay, let's look into that. What regrowth are we talking about? Because procrolipride is for constipation. We started studying it, and apparently there is quite a bit of research showing that procrolipride is a drug that has neurogenesis and neuroprotection properties.
Which
So
means in
So
layman's
it-
terms,
Cell tissue growth.
it affects, well, if one wants to study, then you have to look at serotonin, which is a very well and famous, I'm not going to cover it here, but YouTube or anywhere else you want to study about it, serotonin is a very, very important.
and serotonin is a component in procrolipride.
Okay, serotonin is the natural thing that happens to the body. Procrolipride tries to sort of emulate certain
Okay.
things that serotonin does.
Okay.
That's a very inaccurate. I'm not a physician, so
Right.
but basically what happened is that this procalipride also, by the way, if you look it up, 5-HT4, it would be regarded as 5-HT4. The 5-HT4, the procalipride does what serotonin needs to be. So with any deficiencies, it would cause those things to happen. And indeed, what happened to Jane was there was regrowth of neurogenesis, regrowth of nerves, neuroprotection, allowing the saving of those or the protection of those cells. And just recently, and that was probably the biggest breakthrough, was that we talked to one of the leading, if not the leading, person in research of the gut. Is called Dr. Michael Gershon from Columbia University, and he wrote a very famous book called The Second Brain. And we asked him, how could it be that what happened to Jane happened? And he brought another theory to bear, which is not only does it help constipation, not only does it help constipation of scleroderma, not only does it do neurogenesis and neuroprotection, there are now reports that procalipride interacts, or I should say 5-HT4, and not necessarily just procalipride, interacts with the immune system. And scleroderma is an autoimmune
disease.
So
Right.
that's where people need to look at. Procalipride may have affected her tissue, her nerve cells, her immune system, and that's how she recovered. And that's, if that is true, and one day somebody studies that, they'll understand how come Jane recovered.
Yes, and the implication there is that there are so many autoimmune diseases that if it could impact
Exactly.
one, it's worth looking at how do we then apply this research to other autoimmune diseases, or
I'm not sure it
Focus?
would always be relevant to those other immune diseases, because we're talking specifically of an immune disease, that this scleroderma, which affects the gut in this case, but has actually destroyed, as Jane said, made it flat, completely flat. The reason they wanted to take her, the colectomy, to take her gut out, is because it was no longer functioning. And now she got procalipride, and it is functioning again. So the procalipride actually acted on that section of the body. So if you have autoimmune diseases elsewhere, nobody knows.
got it. So I'm going to go on to a couple of other things
Sure.
because I just, I went online and looked up. So the drug in America, congratulations, is available this year, and it's called Motegrity.
Correct.
And so this is what it said. There is a Motegrity website. And it says, Motegrity is a prokinetic medicine because it promotes colonic movement. Unlike other prescription medications for chronic idiopathic constipation, Motegrity works differently by enhancing natural movements of the colon muscle, known as peristalsis. It targets a specific receptor in your colon. So now we've got this drug available, and Jane, it's interesting. I'm going to jump to another area. I looked up your business website, and you have this quote by Goethe: "Whatever you can do or dream, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it." And that's it. That's what you did. You were unstoppable. You were the uncrushable Jane Grashek. And you continue to just pursue every avenue, knock on every door. You went in front of the Senate. You went in front of Congress, the Department of Defense. You spoke to the head of the FDA. So now we have this drug in this country called Motegrity. And the former head of the FDA said that you can write it, is the term off prescription?
Off-label.
Off-label. So explain what that means.
Well,
Okay, so off-label basically means, so every pharmaceutical company asks for specific indications. I want this drug for headache. I want this drug for that. And what Shire asked for, and has therefore needed to produce research, is that CIC. idiopathic constipation. And then it gets approved only for the indication you've asked for. Does that mean you cannot take it for anything else? No. The FDA actually said, doctor that has access to a prescription can write it even if it's not idiopathic constipation. Now that's the judgment of the doctor, and there could be also an issue with the coverage because the insurance company might say, if you have the condition, then we'll pay it, but if you took it for other reasons, we won't.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate here.
Go ahead,
So it occurs to me, like, one of the things is, first of all, scleroderma is very hard to diagnose. And probably most physicians aren't that familiar with it. So if you go into the doctor and say, I have scleroderma, I want this prescription, you may not get it.
No,
but if you go into
it.
the doctor and you say, I have chronic constipation, I've heard that Motegrity works, can I have a prescription?
That would work, but I would recommend, if you have scleroderma or you suspect you have scleroderma, most people actually have various manifestations, mostly in the lungs and elsewhere, skin. I would really recommend to see a doctor because you need to be treated for many other things. But if you do have constipation, then you could do this exact thing. Plus, let me also play the devil's advocate. Motegrity, I don't know what's the pricing going to be, but America is not well known to be the lowest in the world in drug prices. So the need to get it abroad might, as Jane did.
It still might exist.
Right. But there are 2 points that are very, very important to notice. Someone, a physician, a very brave and knowledgeable physician, said, FDA did not approve it, but I want you to take it. That's what saved Jane's life.
And her willingness.
Right? And so there are doctors that understand that this is a powerful drug. Even one, her GI expert, who prescribed it when it wasn't FDA approved. Now it's FDA approved, and that is the biggest achievement. Not the fact that you could get it in your drugstore, it's more the fact that no physician could say, I can't prescribe it, it's not approved. You can. And no physician now can say it's not safe. It is. Read all the findings of the FDA. It's extremely safe. So it's safe, it's available, go get it in America and Canada and Mexico, wherever you want, but just get it.
So, okay, so now, we've talked before, we want to find Jane too, someone else who's had her recovery, to then pursue studying what actually happened. So let's say in the last couple of minutes, what do you want to happen? What's your message?
I come from a different point of view. I would like to see some people go take it. I think that's really important.
So some people, meaning
everyone who has scleroderma.
Okay,
what are
good.
we doing? Go to the drugstore. Go make up something. Go tell your doctor you can't go to the bathroom. Because I did that. I took it. And you have to have a willingness to want to get better. You don't have to suffer anymore. I'm proof of that.
And this is not like taking some drug on a study that hasn't been studied. This is approved and has been working for millions.
Safe, 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 safe. Go to the drugstore.
Okay.
What have you got to lose? I sound like Anne. What have you got to lose? And thank God for her. Because look, and I'm not going to quit because I know how I feel. I mean, everybody says, oh,
So you're not going to quit telling people?
No.
Okay,
No.
that's your message.
Yeah, it is.
And perhaps to build on that, some skeptics might say, well, it is for the GI. Why would I take it? It is for the GI.
It is.
But all the manifestations of scleroderma that Jane suffered from vanished, not just the GI. Obviously, that was her worst.
Right.
But she's not taking any drugs for scleroderma anymore, and there are no manifestations. So while we can't claim this is a cure for before it was proven, that's what happened to her.
Are you ever afraid that it's going to come back?
Never. It's gone.
Awesome.
No, it's gone.
Love it.
For
Love
sure.
it. Oded, what's your message?
The message is a very strong one. Looking at what we know so far, isn't it morally and scientifically essential to study what happened here? We have one miracle case. We have studies that show it helps constipation, studies that shows that it helps constipation due to scleroderma. We have studies showing neurogenesis and neuroprotection. We have a hypothesis and studies showing it does do something to the immune system, which is not well understood yet, but that's the time to say, is there a second Jane? Can we give it, just like Jane is saying, can we give it to more people?
Absolutely.
If anyone took it, and there would be, let's say, 10 or 100 or 1,000, then maybe there will be one more Jane. It's not necessarily the drug for everyone. But what are we doing not giving it to people? It's safe. What have they got to lose, as and her doctor said.
That's great. So I want to let people know that if they miss the first 2 shows and they still want to see them, they're available to see on YouTube. My channel is Natasha Sherman. There's a little round picture of me. Just click on my name, and the first 2 shows are there. So you can watch those.
And I think that's important.
Yeah.
Because this is quite a progression.
Yeah.
I went from
In a very short period of time.
in a very short period of time.
And
Thanks to
then
you.
this and this show will then appear on YouTube as well. So I want to thank you, and I just want to acknowledge the queen of unstoppability. I mean, I don't know anybody with your kind of spirit and ferocity in pushing through and making sure this happened. And
You know what? I didn't want to die. And you know what? A lot of people don't want to die. So come
Yeah.
on. It's over. It's
Yeah.
here. Let's go. It's here. It's right here. It's at the drugstore. Just go to the freaking
you don't have to go to some hidden place to find it.
If you do get better, please let us know if this is Jane 1, if there's a Jane 2 anywhere.
Yeah.
It's going to help everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you.
Thank you, Natasha.
My name is Natasha Sherman. Thank you for joining us.